We are now into week number 5 of the Overwatch League, stage number 3 of season 2. So it is a week 5, so it's a bit different. We have the Atlanta Homestead actually going on right now. Matches start even earlier than usual on the weekends. This time out, Florida and New York are in their first map. It might be over now. I'm not sure. I was not watching. Um, so got the 4 matches today. Got 4 matches tomorrow. It's really cool that homesteads are always awesome. The Dallas one was great. The Atlanta one is going to be awesome, and the LA one next stage I'm sure will also be pretty amazing. So we got Golden Boy returning. A couple of big things. We got Torb 1v1s going down. Got Widow 1v1 going down between Bren um, and Baby Bay. Um, we got DeFran and Magachu going at it, I believe, on the Torbjorn. So should be a super fun weekend. If you can't catch these games and events, I would suggest going back and taking a look at all of that. Um, Also, you might notice that it's a bit different today. Well, number one, got my forehead showing. Um, just wanted to put my hair up today. But anyway, the big thing that you actually care about is we got. We're not looking at the Overwatch League site. If you notice, we are in Liquipedia, which is a esports like wiki page. Because nothing on Overwatch League is loading except for like the match itself. Like I can watch the match, but none of the other tabs are loading in at all. I was even trying different browsers and it just wasn't happening. So here we are, because all we had to do really was look at the matches. Yeah, so started at 10:30. They're probably about to start the second map now, I would assume. Um, so well, without further ado, we'll just go into the predictions. Um, Other thing to note, I think if Mangachu and Tefran go at it on Torb, I got Mangachu winning, and then Baby Bay will destroy Bren. Everyone knows that. In terms of score, I think Bren gets 1. I assume they'll go to 7. If they do, I would say 7-1. Um, but yeah, those just little notes there. Um, and otherwise, I'm not sure what they're all doing. I'm sure they're doing a bunch of different stuff. They had a bunch of like different like mini games, and they had cosplayers and some other stuff at Dallas. So I assume that Atlanta will be no different. Um, and yeah, without further ado, into the predictions we go. So first of all, we got Florida Mayhem taking on New York Excel, 2-17 versus 17-2. I'm gonna take New York in this one. Um, New York hasn't looked super dominant this stage. They've kind of just pulled through when they needed to. In most cases, they had to reverse sweep the Fuel last time out, who have been terrible this stage. So not the best sign for New York so far, but I still think that they'll be okay in the end, especially against Florida. Florida did score that second victory a couple times out against the Outlaws, but I like New York in this matchup. I think they win pretty easily. I think Florida will snag a map, either the first one or the last one. We've seen New York put in a couple of players on the bench to give them some time when they're up 3-0. So if they're up 3-0, I could see that happening again. And then in that case, Florida could snag a map right at the end. But otherwise, I got New York taking down Florida. So, and we got Philadelphia taking on Washington. And this is actually really interesting because Washington's out of it for the stage playoffs, but Philadelphia is 3-2 right now. So in terms of map differential, theirs is not good, but they still have a chance at the playoff because the Dragons are 4-1. So Philadelphia, you can see, plays them tomorrow. So if Philly can beat Washington here, if Guangzhou can somehow beat Shanghai, I don't see that happening, but if they do, we've seen upsets this stage. Then Philadelphia has their own destiny in their hands. If they beat the Dragons, then they are into the stage playoffs. That's also the one way that Guangzhou could make it if they win both of their matchups, and then you see Shanghai lose both of theirs. They could sneak in. The Gladiators still have an outside shot, but Washington needs to beat Philadelphia, and then Philadelphia has to beat Shanghai. And Guangzhou also has to beat Shanghai. So there's a very good chance of, if you look at the standings right now, the top 8, those are the teams that are going to make it. I don't think Philly, Gladiators, or Charge will sneak in. But it's just an interesting thing to note that you generally have some had a stroke there. Generally have some scenarios in the last week where it's like, okay, this team could jump into the stage playoffs, this team could not. We don't have too many this stage. Week 4 was the big one this time out, but we do still have a couple things that could move depending on how these matches go. So anyway, we got Philly versus Washington. That being said, I think Philly wins this one. I think they win it with ease. Washington has been, like I said, they've been my biggest disappointment this stage because I really thought they were going to take a step up, but they still don't look coordinated. And like we know, they have had some people come in later, Arc, Sleepy, etc. But Sleepy's played really well. He's been a bright spot. I feel like Corey has kind of slowed down a little bit in stage 3. He's still popped off on Widow at times, but I feel like his Zarya has kind of cooled off a little bit since stage 2, where he was a standout performer. Arc has been very disappointing. I would almost like to see them put Kha'Zix back in if they're going to be on the Lucio. I severely doubt that'll ever happen, but yeah, Arc has just gone down so many times first in these fights, and for a team like Washington, you can't have that happening when you're just trying to eke out some point wins. So Philadelphia, I'm still not sold on them. I still don't think they're a very good team, especially in this meta. But as more DPS come into play, they do get better. They took a close match against Boston last time out, and I'm gonna say it's a 3-1. Could very well be a 3-0. Washington really likes to tie on those on the assault maps. So moving forward, and that would essentially, if Philadelphia wins, that would officially knock out Gladiators, and I believe it would officially knock out the Charge as well. Then we got the home team in action, Atlanta versus Toronto. So going partially off the Dallas Homestead, I think Atlanta really has a strong showing here. In their last match, Toronto showed some really good signs against the Outlaws. They played way better than they did against Gladiators. But I still don't think they're as good of a team as Atlanta is right now. Atlanta has a terrible stage record, but they've had the toughest schedule. So I think they take advantage of one of the weaker teams in the league in Toronto and win it easily. I'm going to say 4-0. I think they're really going to have the home crowd behind them. They're going to be pumped up just like we saw with Dallas, and they're going to take that series pretty easily. Then we got the Charge taking on the Dragons. So these two teams played last week, and as we can see, where is it? Didn't go super well for the Charge. They lost 3-1. They were able to take a map, and I mean in Overwatch, just taking a map can be really important sometimes. But I see this one as another Shanghai win. I just don't think Guangzhou is good enough right now to beat Shanghai. I would put Guangzhou in like the 13 to 15 range right now, and Shanghai's in like the 5 to 7 range. So I think that the skill gap is just a little bit too wide. I give Guangzhou a little bit of a better chance in this one because a lot of times we've seen teams that play a team twice in pretty close proximity. The team that lost generally can throw a couple of different looks at the team that beat them and give them a bit more trouble. I'm going to say it's 3-1 again, but the maps are a bit closer in general. I think that they'll pretty much go down to last fight, but Shanghai will be able to pull out most of those maps in the end because they are just superior at this meta, and I think that their talent level is just a bit higher in general. So going on to the 7th, we got Philadelphia taking on Shanghai. So this could be a very important match. It could not be an important match. That will depend on the results of the first day. But I mean, essentially for Shanghai, it's win and you're good, win and you're in, because they're sitting at 4-1 right now. And then the teams that are in here, I can go up to the standings real quick. You see all the teams that are locked in are at 5-2. And looking at map differentials, Shanghai is going to be fine because So say Shanghai beats the Charge, so they're at 5-1. We'll say they win 3-1, so they're at 5-1 plus 7. All right. Say Philadelphia 4-0s Washington. They're at 4-2 plus 1. So Shanghai doesn't even need to win the match. All they would have to do, looking at the match differential, they would have to not get 4-0'd. So if they say that happens, Shanghai's 5-1 plus 7, Philadelphia 4-2 plus 1. So if Philadelphia wins that match 3-1, Philadelphia is now 5-2 plus 3. Shanghai would fall to 5-2 plus 5. So Shanghai would have the better map differential, so they would be in over the Fusion. So that's the important part to remember here, because that it really could come down to that match, especially if, like I said, if Guangzhou can somehow find a way to upset Shanghai, then all bets are just kind of off. Um, but anyway, I still like Shanghai in this matchup. I think it's close. I'm gonna say it goes down to 5. Sure, I think it goes to 5, but I think Shanghai is still a lot better at the Sombra Goats comp, which is, I would say, stronger than a lot of the multi DPS comps in general. I think you can use it on more maps to great effect. And I mean, Sombra is good against almost every hero in the game. So if you can get that, if you can get your Sombra play down and really coordinate with your team, which Shanghai has done, you see Ding be extremely effective on this Sombra. Then you have the advantage. So I'm going to give it to Shanghai. I think it could very well be a 3-1 or maybe even a 4-0 for Shanghai. But I think Philadelphia keeps it close just because, they're in playoff mode. They're trying to make those stage playoffs and trying to give themselves better positioning for the overall playoffs. But in the end, Shanghai wins the day with their superior compositions. We got Washington taking on Guangzhou after that. So I think Guangzhou wins this 4-0. Guangzhou has been a team that they really beat up on the few teams that are lower than them. There aren't that many teams that are like significantly lower than them. Like a lot of teams are like right with them or just above them. But we have seen them have a lot of success against some of the weakest teams in the league. They don't like play down to their opponents really. So I think that at least a couple of the maps are close. In particular, the first couple, because Washington is a lot better at the control and assault maps than the other two. But I still think Guangzhou is able to take all of them relatively close. But again, I'm seeing a 4-0 here. Then we got Florida back in action for their second match of the week. They are taking on the home team in Atlanta, and I'm gonna say Atlanta wins this one 3-1. I think they have a letdown where maybe it's too much emotion. Maybe they're just kind of take it easy, maybe after jumping out to a nice 2-0 or 3-0 lead. But I think Florida finds a way to get a map here. Florida's been playing a lot better as well. So if teams do take them kind of for granted, which I don't know if Atlanta will, but they might. They have a lot of personality on that team, so when you have that, there's a little bit higher chance of something like that happening within the team. But again, Atlanta's still a much far superior team in my eyes. I think they go 2-0 on their homestead and wrap this one up 3-1. And then I don't know why Atlanta match isn't last. That's kind of weird to me. But we got New York and Toronto. Ugh, need some water. I think New York pretty much rolls over them. I'm going to say this one's a 4-0. I haven't said too many 4-0s this week, but we have a couple of the bottom teams. I mean, probably. I think Toronto might be better than Paris now, but we got Washington, Florida, and Toronto, and Guangzhou. You can make an argument that these four teams are like all in the bottom 5 of the league right now. So I think there's going to be some pretty lopsided matches this week, but I think there should also be a couple of really good ones. And like I said, the homesteads are awesome. I love that idea. I love that they've implemented that, and it's going to be really cool to see next year how it expands as the teams like all start to get their own little stadiums to go in. But in terms of a final line, like I said, I think New York 4-0s here. They want to pump up their map differential because for them they could be looking at that number one seed in the overall playoffs now. They're at 17-2. The Titans are at 20-1. So you win both your matches this week. You're only one game behind them, and these teams play in stage four. So they'll be right there for that number one seed. So I think they'll be motivated. They're also trying to finish off this stage undefeated, and I do think they will get it done. Finish 7-0 and lock themselves in as the number one team for the stage playoffs. So thank you guys for watching. Like I said, if you can watch these days at all, I would highly recommend it. If not for the matches, just for the atmosphere, for the little stuff that they'll do in between matches. It should be super cool. And then otherwise, I'll see you guys for the Stage 3 playoffs. I'm super excited for these stage playoffs. I mean, we got teams like Valiant Outlaws jumping in somehow, really turning their seasons around. We got the heavy hitters, New York and Vancouver, still towards the top. We got a potential first round matchup between a team like maybe the Spark and the Shock, or the Dragons and the Shock. Um, we could possibly have a rematch between the Titans and the Valiant. Valiant beat Titans earlier this stage, so should be an awesome stage playoff. I'm super excited to see it. But other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic couple of days, and then I'll see you in the next one.